So, day 5, and just when you thought things couldn't get more unpredictable in this courtroom circus, Justin Bieber walks in. Not as a bystander, not as a fan. He's here for Diddy.
Let me tell you, the entire courtroom. You could feel it, like static in the air. Everyone turned. Phones subtly came out. Security tightened. Cameras flashing. This wasn't just another hearing. This was about to shift everything.
Because here's the thing. Justin didn't just show up. He stepped in, and Diddy, he completely lost control. Right there, in front of the judge. But we'll get to that meltdown in a moment. Because what led up to it? That's where the real story begins.
The courtroom had already been tense all morning. The testimonies weren't going in Diddy's favor. The prosecution had dropped some timeline inconsistencies that left Diddy's defense squirming. Then, mid-session, murmurs started swirling. A black SUV had just pulled up, and out stepped someone no one expected to see connected to this case.
Justin Bieber, sunglasses on, hood half up, but unmistakably him. And before anyone could really process what was happening, he was already being ushered into a private chamber. People were whispering, is he a witness? Is he testifying for Diddy? Against him? And if you follow the Diddy allegations, you know this isn't just legal stuff. This is personal. It's raw. People's lives are cracked open here. The air is thick with judgment, media pressure, and the kind of truth people fight to bury for years. But back to Bieber, because what he did next, nobody saw it coming. See, before the judge even walked in, someone inside the courtroom, probably a journalist, held up their phone. And there it was, a post from Bieber, live, time-stamped, just minutes before. It was a photo. Him and Cassie, taken years ago at a music event. But it wasn't the image that rattled the room, it was the caption.
Cassie, I see you, I remember what I saw, and I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. That was it. No hashtags, no promo, no explanations, just raw truth. The courtroom didn't breathe. Even Diddy, who had walked in with his usual swagger, stopped cold when one of his attorneys snatched his phone from his hand. But it was too late. He'd seen it, everyone had. And that's when it happened, the unraveling. Diddy, the man who once called himself the architect of Bieber's early career, slammed his hand against the table. A water glass flipped, shattered on the floor. Audible gasps. Reporters scrambled to text their editors. The judge banged her gavel. Mr. Combs, control yourself. But he wasn't hearing her. He stood, finger pointed at Cassie. You know this is all lies. And him, of everything I did for him. Security started moving in. His lawyer was trying to pull him down into his seat. Didn't work. He shoved him off.
Then, the threat. Out loud. In open court. I'll make sure he never works in this town again. Neither of them will. Every pen in that courtroom froze. The judge? Ice cold. She stood and said, Mr. Combs, you don't control what happens in this courtroom. That was the moment. The persona, the mogul, the mentor, the untouchable, cracked. Diddy didn't just lose it. He exposed it. The control, the fear, the rage. All of it. And suddenly, it wasn't just about allegations anymore. It was about who really had power and what they were willing to do to keep it. Once Diddy was restrained and the jury returned, you'd think the energy might have settled. It didn't. Because then Cassie took the stand again. Calm, steady, like she hadn't just watched one of the most powerful men in music have a public meltdown. She looked straight ahead. And then she said something that made everyone sit up straighter.
I know people are shocked by what Justin posted, but I wasn't. You could feel the shift in the room, like she'd just taken back control. She explained how for years, Bieber was constantly around Diddy. Not just in passing. He was there, really there. Events, parties, behind-the-scenes moments, no camera caught. We were both young. He was like a little brother to the industry, she said. Diddy liked showing him off, bringing him places, teaching him things. But it wasn't mentorship. Not really. She detailed how Diddy had a list, a literal list of men Cassie wasn't allowed to speak to without him nearby. And guess who was on that list? Justin. He'd say, don't smile too long. Don't talk unless I'm close. And if I did, there would be consequences later. Then came the receipts. Prosecutors pulled out text messages from 2017, years before any lawsuits, between Cassie and Bieber.
Cassie, I don't know what to do anymore. He monitors everything. Bieber, that's not normal. You need to talk to someone. This isn't okay. The courtroom went quiet. One juror wiped her glasses. Another looked down and didn't look back up. These weren't just texts. They were evidence. And not the kind you can spin into doubt. And when asked why she never showed those messages earlier, Cassie didn't flinch. Because he told me no one would believe me. And I believed him. Cassie wasn't done. The prosecutor asked if she remembered any moment that stood out, something that tied Bieber, herself, and Diddy into a single, unforgettable flashpoint. She nodded, slowly. Then she said this: "I was talking with Justin by the buffet. We were laughing. It was harmless. Then Diddy saw us. What happened next didn't need shouting or chaos. Diddy didn't need to make a scene. He pulled Cassie aside and whispered in her ear.
Even Justin knows what happens to people who cross me. That line, it cracked the courtroom in half. A reporter dropped their pen. A juror flinched. And Cassie just kept talking. Her voice never wavered. That was the first time I was truly afraid. For Justin and for myself. At that point, the prosecutor didn't follow up with more questions. No dramatic exhibits. No witness transitions. Just silence. And somehow, that silence felt louder than anything Diddy had shouted earlier. Because everyone in that room, judge, jury, lawyers, even the guards, felt it. The manipulation wasn't just behind closed doors. It had always been hiding in plain sight. And then, just when you thought it was over for the day, the prosecution asked the judge to allow one more piece of evidence. Something visual. The judge nodded. The lights dimmed slightly. A screen came down. No one moved. Then, the footage rolled.
It was security camera video, grainy, time-stamped, but crystal clear in what it showed. A hotel lobby, 2018. Cassie is talking to another male artist. Casual, smiling, relaxed. Then, from the side of the frame, Diddy enters. He doesn't yell. He doesn't wave his arms. Nothing dramatic. He walks straight up to Cassie, places his hand firmly around her waist, leans in, whispers something, and just like that, her entire face changes. The smile disappears. Her eyes drop. She nods. He guides her away. That's it. Just 40 seconds. But no one in the room missed what happened. That's the kind of control Cassie had described in her testimony. That quiet, suffocating grip. The type that doesn't need to leave bruises to leave damage. When the lights came back up, Diddy wasn't looking at the judge or the prosecution. He was staring at the floor, and it hit everyone in that courtroom. The truth wasn't just in the shouting or the courtroom theatrics. It was in that silent, subtle footage.
The kind of footage that lingers, that confirms everything. And outside the courthouse, things were already spiraling. By nightfall, the headlines weren't just fast, they were relentless. Bieber validates Cassie's story. Diddy threatens pop star in open court. Video confirms years of silent abuse. But it wasn't just the media reacting. Behind the scenes, the music industry was panicking. Brand deals, quietly pulled. Streaming platforms, reviewing catalogs. Executives, making calls they hoped they'd never have to make. Sources close to Bieber said his phone didn't stop buzzing. Some messages were supportive, others were warnings. One stuck out. You just opened the floodgates. And they were right. Former assistants, dancers, interns, people who had spent years behind the velvet ropes of Diddy's empire, started reaching out. Some wanted to testify. Others couldn't bring themselves to do that. But they were willing to submit sworn statements.
Because now, someone had broken the silence first. Someone the world listens to. Even Usher's old interview resurfaced. The one where he said he'd never let his kids stay at Diddy's house. Fans began connecting the dots. The industry's silence wasn't ignorance. It was protection. And Justin? He didn't make a second post. He didn't need to. One source close to him said it best. He didn't do this to be a hero. He did it because he couldn't stay quiet anymore. Because this wasn't about clout. It was about weight. The weight of being 15 and having adults shape your future like a commodity. The weight of staying silent when you know what you saw and what it meant. And for Cassie, that weight finally started to lift. Because someone who had been in that world, really in it, stood up and said, I saw it too, and I believe you. And Diddy? His empire may not have collapsed that day, but it cracked. In public, on record. And once that crack shows, it doesn't go away.
Now, if you're still watching, ask yourself, how many others saw something, felt something, and said nothing? Because silence doesn't just protect the powerful, it traps the powerless. So if you think this story ends here, it doesn't. This is just the first crack in something much, much bigger. And the next time someone speaks up, it might change everything.